Hey, welcome back to HS Hideaway. So today I'm going to do a review of my first day at the range with my new Glock 23 Gen 4. Overall, I would have to say this is a positive review. I really liked it. I have never fired Glocks really before. I've shot them when friends gave them to me, from both the compact and the full-sized varieties. I have not shot a subcompact Glock. But of the 9mm, the 40 calibers, and the 45 ACP versions of the Glocks, I have a pretty good feeling, I think, for polymer pistols of this type. The only other polymer pistols I believe I've fired recently are the M&P Shields. So that's the 40 and the 9mm versions of those. I did not like those at all. The general hatred towards polymer pistols that people have, if they do have them, for me was in full force with both of those Shields. I didn't really. My hands are a little bit larger than some of my friends that own these polymer pistols, and I really didn't like the way that the subcompacts fit. So I just didn't even try the subcompacts for these handguns. Also, there's another reason why I picked. There's really two main reasons why I picked the 40. One, I have a 40 caliber SIG 229 Enhanced Elite, and I have a buttload of ammunition for it, so I thought if I had another 40 it would be nice. That plus Glock pistols are also on the okay to use list for my police academy, so I needed to have a firearm that might replace my SIG because I just sent it back to SIG. Didn't know when they were going to get it back to me. As luck would have it, they shipped it back today, so I guess I didn't really have a fire drill for me needing this pistol. However, I did buy it, and I am glad that I did. It isn't just a stopgap now. I actually am considering maybe this is going to be my duty pistol as opposed to the SIG, for a number of reasons. Namely, the reason why I sent it back to SIG, why I sent my SIG back to SIG, is that there was a weird little jamming issue. And when I started having it and I started talking to some of the guys at the range that I'd run into a lot, some of my friends that I would shoot with and commiserate with, a lot of them said that Glock is a super reliable pistol. As far as I was concerned, up until this point in time, and I really can't say because I've only fired about 100 and so rounds through it, maybe even less than 100 rounds through it. I can't really say whether or not it's super reliable. I'd like to say that it will be. I can't believe that so many people would be wrong about it. But like I said, I don't have any hands-on experience with it not jamming after thousands of rounds. They say that 200 rounds is a good amount of time for problems to pop up if there's going to be a problem with a Glock, so I'll see that in about 1 or 2 more range trips. I know that my SIG had its issues right off the bat almost. After the first cleaning, I went back out. I think I probably only fired about 150 rounds through it, and the next time I went to the range I was having a jam, which everybody I talked to, even the SIG as well, said it's pretty uncategorical for the SIGs to have a jamming issue. All the law enforcement friends that I have, they don't seem to think that SIGs are jammers, but they also don't think that Glocks are jammers either. So I just wanted to explore it. So many people use the Glock. So I don't know if you've noticed it, if you have one yourself, or if you're thinking of getting one and you've been doing a lot of research like I do, the nutty searches that you end up doing late at night, looking at all the sites. I've not really changed much about the firearm. I haven't even tried using a light with it. I don't own a tactical light. I know that the academy that I'm going to says you need to have a handgun with a light because we're going to be using it when we get into that portion of the academy, which we haven't gotten into yet. So I have one. Obviously, all of the Gen 4s, I think all the Gen 4s have the Picatinny rail. Actually, it's not a Picatinny rail. It's some sort of Glock version of a rail. It looks like a Picatinny, though. I'm not quite sure. But there it is. It has a rail. The only things that I have changed about it really are that I've put in a Tungsten Guide Rod. And I know that one of my buddies wants me to give him what I think about the Tungsten Guide Rod as opposed to the polymer rod that it comes with. My main issue with, well, I had 2 main issues with the polymer rods, was it just looked the whole assembly looked really flimsy. The base plate that presses up against the barrel lug, I don't know if you can see it on this, it's pretty thick. I mean, well, you have no real point of reference. I actually don't even know where the other guide rod assembly is. I put it in one of my bags. I don't ever intend to put it back on. So right off the bat, I highly recommend getting either the stainless steel or the tungsten guide rods. The stainless steel, I think they say, is about twice as heavy in, not tension, but in overall weight than the plastic guide rods are. And the tungsten rods are heavier still than the stainless steel, I think by about 3 grams in the full-sized pistols, so maybe even less of an increase between the weight of the stainless steel replacement or the tungsten replacement. There is a larger increase of cash that you have to spend for the tungsten. I just thought, I'm going to have this gun for the rest of my life, so I probably aren't necessarily going to be doing much for myself by saving a couple extra bucks by not buying the tungsten. So that's, for my buddy that asked me the question, that's my recommendation. If you just want to stop it right here and go out and buy it, go ahead and buy the tungsten guide rod. I did do a little shot-by-shot comparison, 4 rounds each, with the polymer still in. Then I ripped out the polymer and replaced it with this guide rod. Right when I shot it, and I still believe this, right when I shot it, I felt an incredible difference. To me, it was a massive increase in my regaining the sight picture with my front sight. I was shooting at first 7 yards, and then I moved it out to 25, and as far as I could tell, I was acquiring the targets much faster, even out at 25 yards, with the new guide rod. At least a lot faster than I could with the plastic, and I bounced it back and forth, and I believe that it's faster. When I did, though, I'm going to put this little grain of salt into this part of the review. When I look at the camera at the sideways view that I had for shooting, it looks as though the firearm is jumping more with the new guide rod in, with the tungsten guide rod. And by that I mean it looks as though when I fire that there's almost more muzzle climb with the new rod in as there was with the plastic. That could totally be my error not clamping down tightly enough. It could be that my hand was getting fatigued. I highly doubt that. I had just started shooting. But my take on it is that when I recall why is it better, it's not necessarily, pardon me for pointing this at the camera, it's not necessarily that the muzzle didn't climb as much, so therefore there was less felt recoil. It's that because, and I'm going to pull it out again just because I want you to see again close up what I'm talking about, that the actual guide rod itself is stouter and it's heavier built than the plastic is. I don't think you can see too well with the camera. There is a little bit of wavering within the spring because it's a spring under tension, but that is a really, really thick piece of metal there. And it's not going to bend, it's not going to give under pressure, as these polymer pistols are prone to do. I don't know if you can see it, but even when I flex in with my fingers, there's a little bit of space that you can see between the trigger assembly and the side of the gun that closes when I press on the gun a little bit. So plastic flexes, everybody knows plastic flexes, but with this guide rod, I believe that the force finding its path of least resistance after detonation wants to move, and let's see if I can put this back together without jacking it up. It wants to move more back into me and then up, as in, you know, when you're firing a large caliber pistol like a 1911 or whatever, you really can see how there's movement up and back, as in back and then up again with the pistol. Whereas with these little pistols, the recoil and the regaining of the sight picture is so fast you don't really notice it. But the same thing's happening, right? The gun wants to go backwards, it hits your hand, then it rides up. With this guide rod, I believe more force, I feel more force, especially when I shoot isosceles, is directed back into my arms, and when I shoot Weaver, I can feel my shoulder getting pushed a little bit more as I'm firing before the gun starts to move around. There's a lot less side-to-side deviation with the gun with the tungsten rod as opposed to the plastic. So for me, after about 50 or so rounds firing through with the new guide rod, it was just back to square one again. I was able to float the front sight back to my target even at 25 yards and shoot fairly well. So that was kind of a lengthy description of why I believe the tungsten guide rod is a lot better. It is more expensive. I ordered mine from the Glock store and they gave a really good price. I'm not trying to plug him, but Lenny Magill, he knows what he's talking about, and he runs a pretty good store. So I would say go check it out there. If you want to ship through Amazon, Amazon doesn't give you any real discount. I think it's like a little bit less expensive for me with my Prime account, like $1 less expensive to ship it to me, even when I'm buying through the vendor that is the Glock store on Amazon.com. But if you wanted to go look at all the other things that Lenny Magill has, he does have a comprehensive set of gear on his site. So I'm firing 165 grain Winchester white box through my handgun, and I probably should have said that right off the bat in the beginning of the video, but I completely spaced out on it. It's not too important to know the grain weight of the load, because who knows how much powder you put into there. I mean, maybe the factory has put a really hot load with 165 grain round in there, or maybe it's a light load, or maybe it's hand loads, whatever. But this is factory 165 grain Winchester white box, so if you fire that, this is probably going to be the same type of reaction you're going to find with this. I would say, if I think about the fact that there's a little bit more visible muzzle climb with that tungsten guide rod, it's possible that if you fired a really hot hand-loaded 40 caliber through here, it would be more of a felt recoil than if you had the polymer in there. I don't know why that is. I think the felt recoil was less in my arms, which is really the only thing that matters, as opposed to what you see on camera. I'm just going to throw that out there, that maybe you would want to grain of salt the fact that maybe the tungsten guide rod would only be better if you were firing a certain range of loads, super light loads. Maybe the fact that it's built more stoutly will cause some failure to feeds. This is all speculation. I just want to give it a little bit of an unbiased review, because I actually am quite biased towards getting the heavier guide rod. That muzzle climb actually was noticeably less to me, because I believe that it was more redirected into my frame, as opposed to all over the place where my arms had to keep steadying the thing and bringing it from unknown angles. It was all very repetitive. From a competition standpoint, that's quite important. The rest of the modifications that I have done to it, I have not replaced the firing pin. I have not replaced the extractor retention spring. I have not replaced the takedown lever, whatever you call this thing, the slide release lever. There's a reason why I say that now, is I actually intend to. I don't think, to me, it's not very difficult once you realize that the gun needs to be firing pin depressed, which I was an idiot right off the bat. I was trying to take it down with the firearm cocked, because I always do this when I empty a gun before I clean it, and I'm so used to 1911s, which are easier to take down, especially the part where you pull the slide off. It's easier to take it down with the hammer back. This is my very first striker fired pistol, so I was not really thinking too clearly about this. It was not dangerous. I know that the gun's unloaded. In fact, that's why I do that, to make sure that the gun's unloaded. But this actually has to be taken down while the striker is in the down position. And now what I just did there was what I've learned to do when I'm removing this slide. I use my nails. Now, I don't know about all of you. I cut my nails fairly short. I don't like them hanging up or ripping on anything. So I actually had to dig my nails into the little grooves in this stock slide release lever. And for me, it's slightly painful. I don't necessarily like the way it feels. It's not one of those things where I can do it super fast. I would like there to be a little bit more purchase. So whether you get the aftermarket slide release lever that is trapezoidal, so it gets thicker towards the, if you're looking down the barrel, it would be trapezoidal, so there's more of a pad to release pin or release lever purchase that you can get, or you get the one that's just extended and is rectangular, like this one, just a little bit longer, so you can get more purchase that way. It's up to you, really. I would just recommend getting one. I don't know about everybody getting the stainless steel parts. I like it looking black and just bland. Plus, I believe if there's any reason why my Academy wouldn't want me to use something that's aftermarket, they're sure as heck not going to notice that it's, all black. It's not going to call attention like if it were a blue or a gold piece. I'm not trying to pull one over on them. I just don't want to have any problems. So I think that that's probably an okay modification. I have not done one thing to the trigger. It's still a 5-pound trigger, which honestly I don't see any issue with that. I have a SIG 229, like I said earlier. It's a double to single action. That first double action is, they say it's 10 pounds. I think it's around 9 or so pounds. I put a gauge on it and pulled it. And the next one I think is down to 4, they say on the website, but it's around 3.9 or something. So it's pretty accurate. So I don't really notice the difference. But when you go from a 10-pound initial trigger pull on that SIG, and I'm used to that, I'm totally used to pushing it out and firing that, to a constant 5-pound pressure, which is only 1 pound more than what the single action is on my SIG, it was a totally easy crossover. I know if you watch Hickok 45's channels, he sleeps with his Glock, right? He's literally a Glock guy. He's used to shoot SIG. He has a couple SIGs, and his big knock is he doesn't like double to single. Whatever the firearm is, he doesn't like double to single. Personal preference, I like double to single. I think it's a fantastic safety. This thing has a safety on it. It has the trigger safety where there's a little middle part where you actually have to depress this for the trigger to be depressed. That's fine. I'm getting super used to it. I feel that there's enough of a retention here that you cannot. There's a little bit of play. Yeah, I'm not going to jar this. It's not going to be bashed or anything to go off. It really is a deliberate pull. I understand why the academies don't want you. I understand why you don't. The agencies don't want you to mess with the trigger. But you can, if you wanted to, replace 2 pieces of the trigger assembly inside the frame to pull it down to, I think, a 3-pound pull. So a competition strength pull. That could be something that you'd want to do. If I were shooting at the range all the time, or if my girlfriend wants to shoot, and she absolutely hates Glocks, but she likes the SIG when it goes to single action, that'd probably be something that I would do if I were having her shoot quite a bit. Other than that, I don't think it's needed. I'm super comfy with it already after about 100 rounds, so that's not an issue. The thing that I did do immediately, though, and I do this with every firearm I have, whether it be a revolver, my 1911, the SIG, now this thing, I literally would do it if I bought a pump shotgun, because I like the company so much. I replaced, well, didn't replace, I stuck on some Hogue grips. These are the Handall grips, because Glock obviously is a polymer firearm. There's no grip to remove. The frame is the frame. The frame is the grip, rather. So this is a wraparound grip. Pachmayr makes some that are pretty good. I put one on earlier. I just took it off because I like the Hogue ones. I just wanted to make sure that I could see the difference. Pachmayr, Hogue, 2 good companies. I just really like Hogue. They feel really good. The type of rubber they use is super tacky, especially after you've cleaned it. It's super, super tacky. And I like the grip swells on this. It makes it feel a lot like my SIG. It makes it feel a lot like my 1911. And I like the fact that even though there are grip grooves on these Gen 4s, they mold the insides of these wraparounds, these Handall grips, to accept those nubs on whether it's a compact or a full size. I think the only thing that about the compacts taking the Handall grips are the grip does touch a little bit on the mag release, but it's an imperceptible change. Oh yeah, also I did switch the mag release around to a left side because I am lefty, and that was super, super simple with these Gen 4s. They have an ambidextrous setup for their magazines. All I had to do, pop the leaf spring out, or the roll spring rather, this little piece of wire, and then switch out the mag release lever and have it accept it again when I put it back in, when I put the spring back in. There's a bunch of videos about that online that are all pretty dang good, and I think Brandon does one that's a pretty solid one. About the mag release, I am going to replace it. I've ordered one already. I've ordered the black extended mag release. There's two different types. There's a teardrop one, and then there's another one. The one that I ordered is not the teardrop one. It's the other type of mag release. It's whatever you think is going to be more comfortable. This, now watch me, rounds in here. This is probably a big no-no, but releasing this magazine is kind of a pain in the ass. And by pain in the ass, I mean it's a pain in my finger. It feels like hell. It actually causes a lot of pain. I actually have to switch the firearm over to a more pressured side of my hand. Mag out. No rounds. I have to switch it around in my hand, which is awful, and it's not necessarily a way to move quickly when especially in competition or if you're under fire. I necessarily have a weird grip because I'm left-handed. With all the firearms that you could have that are built for a right-handed person, I definitely have a weird grip. I manipulate my takedown or my hammer drop with my SIG with my left index finger. Looks goofy. I'm just really good at it. Normally I switch my finger under and depress a mag release like on the 1911s where you can't make an ambidextrous. Some of them you can't make an ambidextrous mag release. Mine you can't. I'm just used to that. When I saw that you could make an ambidextrous mag release on this firearm, it was super exciting for me because then I can do an empty reload without having to jack around with the handgun first, catch the mag, and then drop it or whatever. I could have my hand going to my mag pouch right off the bat and then be fine. But I can't with this because it fucking hurts. So I'm replacing this piece of plastic with another piece of plastic that can accept Allen screws, like chuck screws, hex screws, and I'm putting an extended mag release on that. Other than that, the only thing I'm really dreaming to do is replace these factory sights with night sights. I know that if you remove the front sight on these Gen 4s, I don't know about the Gen 3s, but there is, right where the tip of my finger is on the top of this front sight, there's a piece of plastic that is helping keep this front sight attached to the slide. And let me remove the guts of this thing so I can show you what I'm talking about here. If you look up there, let's see if the light can be our friend. What am I going to point with? I'll point with the pick. If you can see that part that I'm touching right there, that little nub, that actually gets knocked out, I believe, when you remove that pin with a front sight removal tool. And that, I believe, needs to be replaced. So says Lenny Magill, once you pull it out. So the only reason why you'd pull that out is that you are replacing it with another sight, which I intend to do. I want night sights on this pistol. Anybody who's ever walked to their house putting the firearm away in a safe when they go to sleep at night knows that it feels pretty good when you look down and you see those little dots glowing in front of you. And I don't know about anybody else, but I can't help it. I always kind of point as I walk around through the house. It's just been something I've done since I was a little kid, but now I can actually see. I can see what I'm pointing at. So I'm going to replace these sights. It's just, it's pretty expensive, and I need to buy a rear sight aligning tool. So that's yet more money. I think they cost about $100 more or more when you buy those. And I have to get one for my SIG too, so it's just a really daunting idea of paying all that money. Not really looking forward to doing that. So yeah, what am I recapping with? I'm recapping with I really want to buy a slide release pin or whatever these are called, an extended one. I want to get different sights on it. I would like to replace the firing pin with something that's a little bit more stout, just to try it out, but it's not a needed thing. The grips are great. The Tungsten Guide Rod I highly recommend getting. As far as I'm concerned, it's a really good pistol. I normally was a really big Glock basher. I'm not anymore. I really like the firearm. I can't wait to buy a holster for it and start competing in IDPA with it. The fact that it rides so low on my hand is a tremendous addition to my ability to shoot. This thing shoots like a laser beam. Maybe it's just me having the gun for the first time. I don't mess with it. I think every gun's more accurate than you are. Hickok said that perfectly. But I'm telling you, at 25 yards, there's no indoor range around here. I actually haven't shot at any other range that has a longer reach than 25 yards yet. But I don't hold over anymore. I know that's a lot more to do with the caliber that I'm shooting, with the cartridges that I'm shooting as far as holdover goes. But the way that these sights line up for me, it's just me maybe, but I just feel super accurate. I have a complete and utter confidence with it. And that's one of the big selling points of Glock, that it's a super, super heavy confidence firearm. To recap, yes, I love it. I think people should give it a little bit less shit. The only thing I have to say about the people that give Glock shit still, now that I've fired it, I'm still going to say that it's not a nice firing pistol compared to the SIG or the 1911, or as I've heard that even the new Walther PPQ, that with that trigger, the way it feels, it's supposed to be pretty nice. I haven't shot it yet, but steel frame pistols are always going to be a lot more comfy to shoot, in my opinion, because they're the weight that they have and the fact that they don't, you know, vibrate or warble around when you fire them like a polymer pistol does. It's going to be more of a comfortable shot. I mean, imagine hitting a hard ball with a solid plastic baseball bat as opposed to a wood, and then go move over to a metal baseball bat. You know, they'd have different vibrations. I'm not saying one vibrates more than another. Of course they do. If you hit one up on the tip of the bat with a metal bat that doesn't have a plastic tip on it, may have a handful of bees, right? But look at that wooden bat that you hit it with. The different substrate causes the different vibrations. It's not necessarily a nerdy thing, even though it sounds really nerdy. But, you know, they're going to feel differently, and I believe that steel pistols are a lot more comfortable to shoot. But my new take on it is, I used to say that a Glock is the Toyota Corolla of the gun world. It just does what it does. It's not really snazzy, and it's not shit. It just is what it is, and it's not flashy. I take that back now. Having gone through an unworkable jam issue with one of my firearms that I completely loved, I just took the SIG shirt off. I'm a big SIG fanboy. This thing feels like it's not going to break. It feels like it's going to last forever. And if it does break, it costs $600. You can go buy a new one, and you'll still have the first cost of one of those higher-end pistols. I just don't understand why anybody wouldn't have one of these things. I'd buy stock in Glock if I had the money to buy it. Anyway, back to you all. Hopefully you have a nice day. This is HS Hideaway, and you will see me in another review in the future. Good luck.